I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and I wanted to talk a second about something that I hit on this weekend, and I wanted to kind of address it again and dig into it just a little bit more. I won't take much of your time. I appreciate you listening. If you recall, a few days ago, there was a video that was run through our platform that involved Steve Harvey telling excuse me, telling a joke, or basically making a joke to a white woman in the audience who asked him a question about what you do when you're asked uncomfortable questions. And one of the things that he said in this joke was that he doesn't give a damn about slavery. And it was a joke, but he said it a couple of times, that he sort of continued to reiterate, on this, and it really bothered me. Uh, for a lot of reasons, which I won't go into every one of them, but the obvious statement, "I don't give a damn about slavery." I think, uh, I think most of us, most normal black people, self-respecting black people, can understand that this is a disturbing statement. Even if you give Steve Harvey a pass, it's still very disturbing because you will never hear a prominent Jewish performer say, "I don't give a damn about the Holocaust." That wouldn't happen. They would literally tar and feather his butt uh, in front of the public. I mean, they would not let this guy finish his career if he was to say something like that. So I think that as black people, we have to ask ourselves, why is it acceptable for us to be expected to willingly humiliate ourselves, all for the sake of a bigger paycheck, when nobody else is expected to do the same thing? A lot of it is because we have a very low self-esteem as a people. We are used to people walking all over us. We're used to people telling us what to do. We spent hundreds of years learning how to be slaves. We spent hundreds of years learning how to look to white folks, almost like our parents, for validation, for self-esteem, for all those things. And I just vehemently reject that whole idea altogether. It doesn't mean that you have to dislike white folks in order to stand up to them, but at the end of the day, you have to have pride. You have to have self respect. You cannot go through life waiting for somebody else to pat you on the head and say, "Good boy," in order for you to feel like you are a successful person. And the crazy thing to me is that those words that I just said, which I hope make sense to you, those are considered to be controversial words. Those are considered to be the words of an angry black man, a radical Negro. Well, there's nothing radical or angry or controversial or crazy about saying that we should respect and love our people. There's nothing radical about saying that our ancestors went through a hell of a lot so we could be here today, and that we shouldn't piss on their grave by saying that we don't give a damn about what they went through. Do you know how many millions of black people have been beaten, raped, castrated, burned alive, had their families torn apart, gone through all kinds of hell so that we can have the freedom that we have right now? That's how I feel about it, and I hope that most of you feel the same way, or at least understand where I'm coming from. Imagine your mama being beaten and raped and humiliated in front of everybody, and then somebody saying, "I don't give a damn about my mama," hook, 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 and laughing about it. That's the way I feel when I hear a black person say that about slavery, because those women that endured slavery, those are all of our mamas. Those are our grandmamas, our great grandmothers. Those men, those are our fathers and grandfathers and great grandfathers who were forced to endure unimaginable humiliation, and we should never sell that to a corporation. We should never sell that dignity that we have as a community to anybody, no matter how much money we get. And so that's the first thought. Believe it or not, that was actually something I didn't even plan to say. But as I just started thinking about it, it really becomes very overwhelming, because I think about all the sacrifices that were made for us, and I can't even imagine what it would have felt like to be on that plantation, to be the man that I am now. I'm not a dumb man. I'm an educated man, and all this other stuff. And I cannot imagine being in a situation where I was gonna be punished and beaten for trying to learn how to read, or where I couldn't go where I wanted, or to have my children or my mother and father ripped away from me at an early age. I think that we should all give a damn about that. I mean, and I know that Steve was making a joke when he said it, but the thing is that celebrities are incredibly influential. Because black people have not really, we really lost who we were when we were detached from our African roots. We get a lot of our influence from celebrities. Some people get to the point where they worship celebrities because they don't know who they are. Nobody told them that you come from kings and queens and great traditions, or these are the cultures of this is the culture of your people that you should follow in your own life. Many of us don't learn that, so we look to our favorite rapper to learn who we are. We look to a guy like a Steve Harvey or some other celebrity who's pretty much propped up by a big corporation that's not owned by black people. That's a very dangerous thing, just so you know. Many of the most influential black people have been selected by white people to be influential over the black community. Take your time one day and really think, to ask yourself this serious question. And I'm talking to the serious people here. I'm not talking to the people who think I'm crazy. I'm talking to those who really have an open mind on this issue. Ask yourself, how many really prominent black people do you know of in entertainment who were not propped up by a corporation that was run by whites? How many? Most black people that are famous and successful, they were given a show by white people, or they were given a record deal by white people. They were given a book deal by white people. They were given a movie deal by white people. You take white people out of the equation, you take their white benefactors out of the equation, they have nothing. Lee Daniels would have nothing if it wasn't for Rupert Murdoch at Fox and the other people that have funded his movies, Precious and all these other films. So it really even goes to the very top. And so my point in all this is to say that when you talk about that degree, that depth of economic influence on our people, you're really talking about this form of imperialistic, capitalist, white supremacist assimilation that is forced upon you in a form of brainwashing that is so debilitating that you don't even feel the pain anymore. You're not feeling the pain of losing who you are because you never had it in the first place. And so, for many of us, that assimilation, that kind of going along with the program, that I'm going to piss on the grave of my great 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 grandmother to get a laugh out of a white woman. A lot of black folks are completely immune to that because at the end of the day, their answer to every question is, well, I'm successful, I have money, so therefore it must be okay. And so, without it being a situation where there has to be animosity, I think that there have to be some of us who stand up and say, no, it's not okay. No, you're better than that. You don't have to keep bowing and scraping and letting somebody else force you to do something that they would never do to their ancestors. They wouldn't be allowed to do it to their ancestors, right? Because if you bring it right back to a guy like, say, a Steve Harvey, um, you know, my question would be, um, I understand the value of money. I understand that we have to make trade-offs in order to make money. But my question is, how much money do you need before you can be a free black man? How much money do you have in the bank before you get to the point where you say, you know what, I'm not gonna. There are certain things I just won't do for money. One of the reasons I respect the actor Idris Elba. And notice, Idris Elba he's been in Tyler Perry movies and stuff like that. But what I like about Idris Elba is this: Idris draws the line. Idris says, these are certain roles I just will not take because I have a responsibility to represent myself and my people in a certain way. So he even said that about Tyler Perry films, and he was in Daddy's Little Girls, and he'd play that role as a father who loves his black daughters, which is, I mean, everybody can applaud something like that, but he pretty much blew off the Medea type stuff. He said, I'm not going to do that stuff, and so my argument is that when you think about money, and remember, I'm a finance professor. That's what I've been doing for 20 years. I've studied money and learned about money and been talking about money for 20 years. I know the power of money. I know how money works, all that stuff. And here's the thing about money. One of the things that we struggle with as black people, and this is something that I'm actually working on a book about, is what I call black financial addiction. And black financial addiction is basically where money is no longer a tool for your liberation. Money actually becomes a tool for your further enslavement. And the more money you have, rather than feeling more liberated because you have more money, you actually become more enslaved because the more you have, the more you're afraid to lose what you got. Or the more you have, the more you want to get more to add on to what you got. You've gained a habit, almost like an obese person who just keeps eating and eating and eating. They've got this insatiable appetite to keep eating, even though they've eaten far more than what they need in order to be healthy. And so, this black financial addiction affects a lot of people at all different economic levels. I'm not going to say that Steve Harvey is affected by this one way or the other, but I can certainly say that I would be hopeful that Steve would apologize for what he said. I saw that Steve put something on his Facebook page literally the very same day that Your Black World released that video and to our readers, and we have a couple 100,000 subscribers, so I assume maybe it got back to him, and I don't know if it was directed at us or not, but it sounds a lot like he was saying something about us with this quote, and he says, "Become skilled at deflecting negative energy. Keep your focus and attention on your own dreams. Refuse to be influenced by haters' opinion of you." And then he puts the hashtag act like a success. Um, okay, here's what I think about that quote. Number one, I certainly agree with it. I think that deflecting negative energy is very, very important. Focusing on your own dreams is very, very important. If you don't make it happen, nobody will. Refusing to be influenced by a hater's opinion of you, I think that makes sense to a point. I think that what we have to avoid when you talk about taking criticism is we have to avoid the idea of being so paranoid about anybody who says something less than entirely favorable of us that we end up deflecting every piece of advice that we get. That we deflect everybody as a hater. Oh, mama don't want me to go do this because she's a hater. Or oh, so and so my brother said that I was doing XYZ, I was using too many drugs, he's just a hater. Everybody who critiques you is not a hater. And this is actually something I learned from a 3 hour conversation I had with Minister Louis Farrakhan, who I love this man so much because talking to him was like talking to my own grandfather. I'd never met him in person, but we sat and we talked for 3 hours, and it was a really profound discussion. And one of the things that we did talk about is dealing with critics and haters, because sometimes I think when you're in the spotlight, and I would say Steve Harvey much more so than most of us, because he's at the top of the pile. I mean, as far as black men doing what they do, Steve has inspired me in a lot of ways, because I'm sitting there thinking, wow, I didn't know that a black man could actually host a daytime talk show. When I saw him and Michael Strahan doing those shows, I said, okay, wow, so these white women really, they really relate to these guys. I mean, I couldn't see myself doing it, but I applauded the fact that they were able to toe that line, because I don't consider Steve Harvey to be some Uncle Tom type of black man. I follow Steve for probably 20 years now, and I have so much respect for him. But what I think though is that I think sometimes in that pressure cooker, you become very paranoid of anybody that criticizes you because you hear so much criticism. But then also, you are in a vacuum where you are accustomed to everybody loving everything you say. You are accustomed to literally people laughing and clapping when you sneeze, or when you scratch your toe. Like, and that, I think that sort of unconditional approval of every single thing you do, every single thing you say, is something that we can also become addicted to as well. That whenever somebody says something that we don't like, oh, they just a hater. And black people, we love to use that term hater to avoid any form of accountability. You have so many people that literally will define anybody who disagrees with them, anybody who calls them out on their BS, as a hater. Not everybody who speaks up is a hater. Sometimes they might be the people who love you enough to tell you the truth about yourself when you're messing up. So, what I think is this. Look, Steve Harvey uses the hashtag act like a success. What I'm really seeing in the hashtag is, number one, Steve Harvey doesn't have to act like a success because he is a success. He's very successful. I mean, if your measuring stick is how much money you have, how much fame you have, I mean, you can't have much more money and fame than Steve Harvey has. So he's a success. So you don't have to act like a success, Steve. You are a success. Be a success. Don't act like a success. The second thing is, I think that when he says act like a success, based on other pieces of data I've gathered over the years in terms of analyzing Steve Harvey and his words and actions and stuff like that, is I think that for him, acting like a success means kind of carrying an almost royal demeanor, where you are acting like a success because you are pretty much looking above everybody around you. That you're sort of that you got so much swag, so much of a royal presence, that you don't even have to acknowledge the tiny subjects that are beneath you and around you. And and to me, I think, while some might consider that to be acting like a success, I almost think it could be defined as a little bit of arrogance. I mean, I'm not saying Steve Harvey's arrogant, but I think that there are people, and I've heard this. I've heard people say this to me. I've heard them say, they might see me frustrated because I've been trying to correspond with somebody who doesn't like what I say, and I might get into a back and forth with them, and they'll say, "Boyce, look, you're Dr. Boyce Watkins. You don't have to talk to that person. Act like a success." I mean, that's basically what they say. They don't say those exact words, but that's kind of what they say. That because you are at a certain level, you don't have to acknowledge certain people if you don't want to. You don't have to listen to them. And I just kind of reject it. I mean, there are some situations where you say, you know what, I can't sit here and argue with you all day because I got stuff to do. But I think that if you are truly a success, then you are strong enough to withstand all the critique, but at the same time learn something from those who critique you. And this actually goes back to Farrakhan. The thing that Farrakhan said to me that stuck with me was he said it took him a long time to learn that you can learn a lot from your critics. He talked about a person that he said, oh man, she used to give me the hardest time, and he didn't say it like that. He's a very formal, intelligent man, and I'm not even going to disrespect the minister by trying to imitate what he said or reveal too much of the private discussion. However, he did say that this person gave him a very hard time for a long time, and it bothered him, but he eventually learned that by listening to that critic, he became a better leader. He became better at what he did. And so maybe with Steve Harvey, here's the thing: Steve Harvey don't have to listen to black people, really. I mean, first of all, a large percentage of black people are going to like him because he's funny and he's rich. That's it. I mean, for some people, because you make money, you literally can make money murdering little children, and people will still applaud for you and think you have swag because you're a baller. Like that's just how some people think. A lot of people are very shallow like that. But then also, he doesn't have to really listen to black people because white people love him to death. I mean, he's the host of Family Feud. He hosts a daytime talk show. I mean, his movie, was through the roof. He's doing extremely well, and I am absolutely astonishingly impressed with everything he's accomplished. I mean, absolutely flabbergastingly excited when I see just how much he's been able to do. Um, but I would say that maybe that next step for him might be a degree of self-actualization, where you realize that yeah, you are somebody, Steve Harvey, you really are, but you were somebody before you had all the money. You were somebody before the white man patted you on the head and told you that you were a success. Understand that if the white man takes all his money away from you, if they take away the Family Feud, which doesn't belong to black people, they take away that daytime show, which is on a network that does not belong to black people, if they take away that movie that's being distributed by a network that's not owned by black people, if they take away that book that's being published by a company that's not owned by black people, if they take away that radio show, which I don't know who distributes the radio show exactly, but I don't think the company's owned by black people, they take all that away. Don't be tempted to think that you're not a success anymore, that you're still not a great black man. You see, there is value in just having fundamental dignity, and that dignity really is rooted in knowing who you are. And you were somebody, like Jesse Jackson always said, I am somebody. And I never understood that. I always thought it was a cliche that he was being repetitive. But as I got older, I started thinking about what it meant. And I was like, oh, that's what it means. It means I am somebody, even if I don't have a nickel in my pocket, even if I've never been on TV, even if I don't have a college degree, even if I can't go get a job. I still am somebody. And by knowing that I'm somebody, that causes me to carry myself in a certain way. I make decisions in a certain way. I address you in a certain way. I behave in a certain way. I act like a success. Going back to what Steve Harvey said. So, acting like a success does not mean you're a success because somebody gave you something. It means you're a success because of who you are. So I say that to every black man and black woman who's watching right now. You are somebody. And don't you let anybody convince you that you need to have $1 million in your pocket before you become a meaningful, valuable, relevant, righteous human being on this earth. So, what I think with Steve Harvey is this. I'm friends with Ed Gordon, in case you don't know, because I did stuff with Ed Gordon's radio show. I consider Ed Gordon to be a good friend. I really like Ed a lot. But the problem is I know Ed is really cool with Steve, and I don't know how Ed will respond to any of this, and I feel very bad about it. These are the times. This is why I don't like to have. I don't really have a lot of celebrity friends. I don't want to have celebrities call me and reach out to me sometimes, but I don't. I keep my distance because sometimes the truth gets in the way of cronyism. And what I found is that when you get into certain circles, people expect you to do favors. They expect you to look out for each other and to lie for each other and to do things that are unethical for each other. And I just say that if you keep yourself out of certain situations, you don't have to make hard decisions. temptations. It's just like a man who doesn't want to cheat on his wife. Well, he probably needs to stay away from women that are going to tempt him into cheating. That's the best way for him to not cheat. He shouldn't just go around a bunch of beautiful women and say, "Oh, I'm going to just be loyal to my wife," because guess what? That temptation might get you one day, and you may catch yourself becoming a man that you never planned on becoming in the first place. Hashtag Bill Cosby on that one. So what I will say is, what? Oh, sorry. I think my computer went out. So what I will say is when it comes to Steve Harvey, I hope that that the words are taken the way that they're intended. I hope that he has the decency to apologize to his ancestors. I think it's unfortunate that he made that joke. I want to believe that he would take it back if he could. But unfortunately, money and power can kind of make people do strange things. And I think at the end of the day, it's up to us as a community to just speak up and say, Steve, we love you, but this ain't cool. You can't do this. You're not going to say you don't give a damn about slavery because you're an influencer. You influence the way people think. You influence the way other people think about us. When white folks hear a black man say, I don't give a damn about slavery, it makes them say, oh, well, I don't have to give a damn about slavery either. After all, the black man said it. When black people hear a prominent black man they respect say, I don't give a damn about slavery, it influences many of them to not give a damn about slavery. And I think that we all have to give a damn about slavery because at the end of the day, if we don't represent our own history, then who will? I mean, do you really think, I mean, are you really going to wait for white people to really teach you the truth about your history? Do you know how ridiculously counterintuitive that is and how that contradicts the whole idea of white supremacy? The whole premise of white supremacy is to keep your self esteem low by keeping you on a need to know basis when it comes to your own history and your own culture. The best way to break people down and assimilate them is to make them lose track of who they are, not to tell them more about who they are. You don't want to give people pride and dignity and self-respect. That doesn't support white supremacy. So at the end of the day, it's up to us to not just teach our history to our children. It's also important that we represent that history and we defend that history. And that means we have to defend it against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. But unfortunately, we have a lot of people in our community who are addicted to celebrities. They're addicted to wealth. They're addicted to all these other things that make them lose track of the value of the collective dignity that we have to defend as a community. And so what happens, unfortunately, is that we have to sometimes draw lines in the sand. We have to take some people on and have some uncomfortable conversations. And this is one for me. This is one for me because I like Steve Harvey a lot. I really do. And I mean, I really like. I got to know Ed Gordon. He's almost like an older brother to me in a way. I just hated even having to join in this discussion. But this is driven not so much out of dislike for anyone. It's driven out of love for the people who paved the way for me to have what I have today. I think about my grandmother, and I remember talking to my grandmother about racism, and I was asking her advice about Paula Dean when Steve Harvey's partnering with Paula Dean on some project, which I can't sign off on that kind of stuff. I'm sure the network made him do it. But then again, nobody makes you do anything really. And I asked my grandmother about Paula Dean, and I'll admit, I had a position that was a little softer than the one I had when I got off the phone. And what changed my opinion was that I asked my grandmother about what it was like growing up in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, dealing with women like Paula Dean. And I could just hear a type of hurt in her voice, a type of pain in her voice, um, that said she went through so much humiliation, so much agony, dealing with that kind of racism that she could barely talk about it. And if you've seen me talk about my grandmother, Felicia, I called her Mama, and she was such a strong lady. So it's always weird for me to see her talk about something that really affects her emotionally, and that's when I realized how horrible it was to deal with Jim Crow, and if Jim Crow was that horrible, I mean, imagine what slavery was like. So, why in the world? How in the world? In what on what planet? In what dimension? In any universe, can you say I don't give a damn about slavery and write that off as a funny joke, or somehow act like that's not a big deal? if you don't understand where I'm coming from, I don't know what I can do. I don't know what I can do. But I can say that when it comes down to dealing with people who are addicted to celebrities and all this stuff, and people who are just sheeple, who just kind of follow the crowd, who don't take a second to realize that Rupert Murdoch created the show or financed the show Empire, because Rupert Murdoch is a racist who loves the idea of black people being presented in stereotypical ways. Understand, if this was a normal family, the characters would be white. They wouldn't cast black people in that role. That's a special role reserved. Those are nigger roles, basically. When it comes to Fox, it has shown consistently, time and time again, how much they hate you. But for some reason, we don't even see that. I'm not saying people shouldn't watch Empire. If they want to watch it, they can. But what I can say is you need to watch it, understanding what's really happening here. That we are being manipulated. But here's the thing. Here, and this is the last point I'll make. Then I'm going to be done. Not too long ago, over a century ago, China had a big problem with a lot of people who, the same way we're addicted to consumerism and we're addicted to ignorance, addicted to money, addicted to celebrities. China had a problem where people were addicted to opium. There had a lot of people that smoked opium. It was kind of a nationwide epidemic. In case you don't know, opium is a downer, so it basically takes away the productivity of the individual. Which, if you have everybody getting high on opium, then you're just not going to have much productivity in your society. People aren't going to be taking care of their kids. They're not going to be out working. They're not going to be industrious. The country will fail. The community will fail if everyone's addicted to something, anything like that. And so basically, you had people in the community who realized this, who just said, we're never going to go anywhere as a country or as a community if we have so many people smoking opium. So they took a stand. They spoke up. They dealt with the addicts on one hand. They had to fight the addicts who were addicted to the opium, who wanted the opium to be brought into the country by the British. Then they had to deal with the pushers, who were making money selling opium to the addicts. So they had to actually go to war with the British. So they're fighting the British on one hand, and then fighting the addicts on the other, and the local dealers as well, who were making money from the British by selling out their own people. And if you look at maybe what happens in, say, black entertainment or whatever, you've got the same dynamic. You've got people that are addicted to the nonsense and the ignorance. You've got the middlemen who make money by working for the power structure to sell the ignorance to black people, and then you've got the British, the white supremacists, who are making tons of money by basically pushing this stuff onto people that they wouldn't push on themselves. I mean, when the opium trade was going on, the British weren't all spending their time getting high. They were doing what Ice Cube used to say: "Don't get high on your own supply." So they weren't getting high on the opium, but they said, we don't want to smoke it ourselves, but we want you to smoke it all day, because the more you smoke, the more money we make. And it was because those people stood up and they were willing to fight the pushers. They burned down the opium houses. They were willing to really put the hammer down in terms of guiding the future, the next generation of their community. They were willing to fight the British to keep. They said, look, don't push. You're not going to push this stuff in our neighborhood. We're not going to allow it. They dealt with the dealers, the middlemen. Like, if we catch you selling this stuff, we're going to murder you. We're going to kill you. We will execute you if we catch you selling this stuff to our people, because we love our children more than we care about your money. And that's it. We love our children more than we love your money. That's it. It was really that simple. And because they fought that battle, and because they stood up, because they were willing to be, looked at as haters and all this other stupid stuff people say to keep you from telling the truth, because they were willing to stand up, China is now one of the greatest countries in the world, and will one day, very, very soon, overtake the United States in terms of productivity, economic prosperity, and all other measurements, all other measuring sticks of economic progress. So if you want to understand what it really takes to make a community advance, it requires you to be willing to draw lines in the sand. It requires you to be willing to lose a few friends. It requires you to have an unrelenting willingness to tell the truth. It requires you to have an undying love for your children, to the point that you will take on all enemies, both foreign and domestic, in order to allow your community to proceed. And so that's the spirit within which this conversation is occurring. I don't consider Steve Harvey to be an enemy, but at the same time, in that particular moment, he certainly was not an ally. We should all give a damn about slavery, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to really have this conversation. Now that's it. It's late. I'm going to bed. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World. Please take care. God bless. I'm gone. Peace.